Life is full of holes. Even in the best of times, the span of one's years is never a perfect tapestry, laid out in a sprawl of days, months, and years, all woven in flawless detail, each color as bright as when its thread was plaited into the whole. Instead, over time, bits of this tapestry get worn away by age. Other sections stretch out of shape as one worries over them, returning again and again to pull and tug at certain threads. Worst of all, large pieces go threadbare to the point of indecipherability. Still, memory proves to be a devious trickster, filling in gaps, darning rips, patching gaps, often with stories that are not true, only necessary. They are yarn needed to create a whole that one can live with. At this old age, I am not in my best of times. My own tapestry is far more moth-eaten. I'm nearly in my 100th year, so if I don't remember you, it does not mean I do not hold you dearly. If I do not recall every detail of this long story, it does not make it any less true. Here in my attic croft, where I write, I have my sketches and drawings that anchor my past, that do not let me forget, that remind me of the man I once was. As I begin this story, I leave the last of many journals popped open. Near to its last page, her image in ink stares back at me, judging me, daring me. I had used ashes to capture the sweep of her hair, a crush of azure shell mixed with oil for her bright eyes, my own blood for her lips. Her smile is sad, as if disappointed in me. Her gaze is hard and unforgiving. Her cheeks are blushed with barely restrained fury. Long ago, I drew this image from memory, as it was the last time I ever saw her. She, who was prophesied to destroy the world, and did. Hey, what's up? It's Fur Trade ASMR. Today we're starting a brand new book, and this time it's just a fantasy book. Nothing too serious. No philosophy. This is the book called The Starless Crown by James Rollins. All that I know is it's set on a world that's not Earth, and it is supposed to follow a group of adventurers. Actually, I have it pulled up right here. An alliance embarks on a dangerous journey to uncover the secrets of the distant past and save their world in this captivating, deeply visionary adventure. So yeah, that's a synopsis. So, let's go ahead. Today we're going to read the part entitled Before and Chapter 1. So, let's get into it. And as you heard in the beginning, I'll be using my soft-spoken voice. So, here we go. Before. She gives birth in mud and mire. She squats and strains under the fog-shrouded bower of a gnarled cotton gum. Vines choked the massive tree, dragging its limbs to the mossy hillocks and draping leaves into the boggy waters of a slow-moving stream. To her side, a trunk as wide as a horse twists around and around, as if the tree were seeking to escape these drowned lands. She sweats and pants, her legs wide under her. Overhead, her hands remain clamped to a vine. As she hangs there, thorns pierce her palms, but the pain is naught compared to the final contraction that rips her wider and pushes the babe from her womb. She stifles her scream, lest the hunters should hear her cries. Still, a moan escapes, wordless, from her lack of a tongue. As a pleasure serf in Azantia, she was never allowed the luxury of speech. With one last push, she feels the release. The child spills from her and drops to the wet mud underfoot. She slips off the vine, impaled thorns ripping her palms open. She slumps to the mud with the babe between her thighs. The child is still tied to her by a twisted, bloody cord. She sobs with racking heaves and picks up the skinning knife near the base of the cotton gum. The hunting blade is not her own, neither is the blood that already stains it. The knife was thrust into her hands by her savior, by a man who broke a vow to help her escape the castle keep. After sailing across the Bay of Promise, under the glowering eye of a winter sun, pursued by the king's legion, they had made landfall on the treacherous coast of the mire. Its shoreline was less land and more a blurring where the blue sea met the brackish waters, lined by a drowned mangrove forest. Once the skiff could traverse no farther into the swamps. Her rescuer had sent her off on foot, while he pulled the skiff away, intending to lead her pursuers elsewhere. Alone now, she slices his blade through the thick cord, freeing the babe from her body and from her past. She had thought herself emptied, but her belly convulses again. She gasps as blood and tissue flow out, washing over the babe. Fearing the child would drown with its first breath, she wipes the baby's face clean. Its eyes remain closed to this harsh world. Her torn palms smear more blood. Still, she reveals the little pursed lips, too blue, nearly black in the shadows. Breathe now, little one, she rubs and prays. One prayer is answered when the child sucks in its first breath, stirring only slightly, but enough. Her other prayer is ignored when she discovers her child is a girl. No. She picks up the knife again. She lowers the blade to the baby's throat. Better this. Her hand trembles. She leans down and kisses a brow, furrowing towards a first cry at this harsh world. She prays both as an apology and explanation. Be free from me, from my past, from my shame, from those who would take you. Before she can act, the mother below punishes her for daring to forsake the gift granted to her womb. Her stomach clenches again. Hot blood pours out between her thighs. The pain is fiery at first, then turns to a dreadful cold. And still the flow continues, pouring her life into the mud. She reads the truth in the spreading stain. Having been raised among the pleasure serfs, she had assisted midwives with other girls who had found themselves with child. Despite the tears of the bastards Herb, over the passing 2 decades she had witnessed births in all their myriad forms, some joyous, other fearful, most with resignation. All had involved tears. There have been blood, shite, torn flesh, babes born backwards, others deformed by the tease, or bodies broken by their own mothers in attempts to end the child's life before it was born. When she was very young, she had reviled the latter. She had not known what it meant to be a child, born under the whip, to eventually broken under the heaving throes of a master. She eventually learned the hard way and the necessary lessons. She stares down at the knife at her daughter's throat. By now, blood pools heavily under the babe. The scent draws flies and suckers. As she stares down into the eyes now just peeking open, the forest grows hushed, as if awed. Bird song falls silent, leaving only the hum and the whine of insects. A new noise intrudes, a heavy splash to her right. She stirs her cooling flesh enough to turn her head. Even this small movement closes the darkness tighter around her. From the sluggish current of the swamp, a reptilian beast thrashes onto the shore. Claws gouge the muck, dragging its massive length, led by a snout edged by sharp teeth. Though eyeless, it aims unerringly through the reeds and moss, drawn by her blood as surely as the biting flies. No! Her instinct to protect overwhelms the bitter lessons of her past. She lifts the blade from her daughter's neck and threatens the approaching beast. But she knows she can inflict no more than a pinprick, if even that. The reptilian hunter is twice her length, 10 times her weight. She senses its age, reads the centuries in the thick growth of emerald moss, fringing in its black scales. Despite its age, it barrels faster towards her, blind to the knife and all its uselessness. It carries with it the reek of carrion and brackish waters. The moss across its back and flanks glows faintly in the forest shadows. Still, she kneels over the child. She is too weak to even stand. Her arm quakes to hold up the dagger. Darkness continues to pinch her world smaller and smaller. She girds herself for the heavy strike to come, as she did many nights in the perfumed beds of her masters. Her body was never her own. Anger flares through her. Even this fire had been forbidden to her in the past. In this last moment, She takes hold of that flame and screams the last of her strength away. She closes her eyes and cries to the heavens, at the beast, at herself, at a child that would never get to live. For the first time in her life, she is truly heard. A piercing cry rings forth from the skies. The screech is less heard with her ears than with her entire body. The scream cuts through her skin, sharp enough to reach bone. The force lifts the hairs all over her body. She opens her eyes and sees the reptilian beast slide to a stop in the mud, coming to rest no more than an arm's length from her. Panicked, the beast twists and writhes to turn its massive bulk, to return to the safety and succor of the black water. Before it can, branches shatter overhead. A shadow dives through the canopy and crashes into the beast. Sickle-shaped claws cleave through the hard scale. Bones break under the impact of a creature as large as a hay cart. Leathery wings snap outward, striking her broadside, knocking her from her child. She is flung far and crashes into the twisted trunk of a tree. She collapses amidst a tangle of roots. From her side, she watches those heavy wings beat once, lifting the creature back into the air. The reptilian beast is carried aloft. Impaled claws rip it to halves and fling its centuries-old body back into the dark water. Then the winged creature lands in the mud. It swings towards her, revealing its malignant splendor. It holds high its leathery wings, thin enough at the edges to see a sparkle of patchy sunlight through them. It keeps its head low, close to the ground. Large, tuffled ears swivel towards her. Its long, slitted nostrils fan open wider, rippling, testing the air. It hisses at her and raises a furred ridge along its short neck and arched back. She knows of this beast. All of Azantia knows them. The terror of the swamps, the dreaded mire bats, the poisonous denizens of the shrouded volcanic mountain, the fist, at the heart of these drowned lands. Stories abound of these creatures, though few have ever lived to tell the tale of such an encounter. No hunter has ever returned with such elusive, dangerous prey. Not even their bones have ever made it to one of the castle's bestiaries. With her heart choked in her throat, she studies the monster before her. Merciless eyes, as cold as black diamonds, stare back at her. A continual hiss flows from its throat. Her hairs shiver to a sound beyond hearing. She feels it in her teeth, in her skull, playing across the surface of her brain like an oil fire on water. She knows she's being studied more deeply than any eye could discern. Its lips wrinkle back in threat, exposing long fangs, glinting with the sheen of poison. It stalks close to her, knuckling on its wings. No, not close to her, but towards the baby in the mud. Tiny limbs paddle at the air, as if beckoning the beast. She tries to move to her daughter's defense, but she has lost her knife. Not that it mattered. She has no strength left to even crawl. Her body is as cold as the mud under her. All that is warm are the tears coursing her cheeks. Knowing there's nothing more she can do, she accepts the inevitable and sags into the tree's roots. Darkness embraces her. Before it consumes her, she stares one final time upon her child. While she failed to give the girl a life, she had given her a gift as almost as precious, her freedom, as brief as it might be. She takes solace in this as the shadows erase the world. But another was not so easily satisfied. As she fades away, she hears her baby's first cry, lustful and angry. She can do nothing to comfort that wail at a life cut before it had begun. Instead, she offers her final counsel, a lesson hard learned. Better to die free, my daughter. Chapter 1. The Beclouded Girl. We're given a proverb from the book of El. A curse, Alice Weiss, grows from a wish. It probably made as much sense to me as it does to you, but let's continue. Chapter 1. Nyx sought to understand the stars with her fingertips. Near blind, she had to lean far over the low table to reach the heart of the orrery. To the warmth of the bronze sun at the center of the complicated astronomical mechanism, she knew that the kettle-sized sphere had been filled with hot coals prior to the morning's lesson, to mimic the life-giving heat of the Father above who made his home there. She held her palm towards the rings that marked the paths of the inner planets around the Father. Her fingertips stopped at the third. She rested the tip there and felt the vibrations of the gears that turned this ring, hearing the ticking as their teacher spun the wheel on the far side of the orrery to drive their world to Nyx's waiting hand. Take care, child, she was warned. The device was 4 centuries old, one of the school's most precious artifacts. It was said to be been stolen from the courts of Azantia by the founding high prioress and brought to the cloistery of Braic. Others claimed it wasn't stolen but crafted by the prioress herself, using skills long lost to those who lived and taught here now. Either way, better not break it, Dumblefoot, Bayard blurted out. His comments stirred snickers from the other students, who sat in a circle around the doomed chamber of the Astronicum. Their teacher, Sister Reed, a young novitate of the cloistery, growled them all to silence. Nyx's cheeks heated, while her fellow students could easily observe the intricate dance of the spears around the bronze sun. She could not. To her, the world was perpetually lost in a foggy haze, where movement could be detected in shifts of shadows and objects discerned in gradations of shimmering outlines in the brightest of sunlight. Even colors were muted and watery to her afflicted eyes. Worst of all, when she was inside like now, her sight was smothered to darkness. She needed to touch to understand. She took a deep breath and steadied her fingers as the small sphere that was marked their world rotated into her hand. The bronze ring to which it was pinned continued to turn with the spin of the wheeled gears. To keep her fingertips in place atop the fist-sized sphere of their world, she had to scoot around the table. By now, the bronze sun had heated one surface of the sphere to a subtle warmth, while the opposite was cold metal, forever turned from the Father. Can you now better appreciate how Mother always keeps one face perpetually gazing at the Father above? Sister Reed asked. A side that eternally burns under his stern but loving attention. Nix nodded, still circling the table to match the sphere's path around the sun. Sister Reed addressed both her and the other students, and at the same time, the other side of our world is forever denied the Father's fierce gaze and remains frozen in eternal darkness, whereas said the very air is ice. Nix did not bother to acknowledge the obvious, her attention fixed as Earth, spelt URTH, completed its circuit around the sun. It is why we live in the crown, the sister continued, the circlet of the world that lies between the scorched lands on one side of the earth and those forever frozen on the other. Nix ran her fingertip around the circumference of the sphere, passing from north to south and back again. The crown of earth marked the only hospitable lands where peoples, flora, and fauna could flourish. Not that there weren't stories of what lay beyond the crown, terrifying tales of many blasphemous whispered about those dreaded lands, those frozen on one side, scorched on the other. Sister Reed stopped turning the wheel, bringing the dance of the planets to a rest. Now that Nix has had her turn to study the orrery, can anyone tell me why the Mother below eternally matches her gaze with the Father above, without ever turning her face away? Nix kept her post, her fingers still half on the half-warm sphere. Kinjal answered the teacher's question. She quoted from the text they had been assigned to study this past week. She and our world are forever trapped in the hardened amber of the void, unable to ever turn away. Very good, Sister Reed said warmly. Nix could almost feel the beam of satisfaction from Kinjal's twin sister to Bard, both children of the high manor Fisker, the largest town along the northern coast of the mire. Though the town lay a full day's boat ride away, the two lorded their status among the students here, proffering gifts on those who fawned over them while ridiculing all others, often resorting to physical affronts to reinforce their humiliations. It was perhaps for that reason, more than any other, that Nick spoke up, contradicting Kinjal. "But the earth, it's not trapped in amber," she mumbled to the orrery, her fingers still on the half-heated sphere. She hated to draw attention to herself, longing to return to the obscurity of her seat near the back of the class, but she refused to deny what her fingers discovered. "It still turns in the void." Bird came down to his twin's defense, scoffing loudly. Even blindfolded, any fool could tell the mother always faces the father. The earth never turns away. "This is indeed immutable and unchangeable," Sister Reed concurred. "As the father burns forever in our skies, the mother always stares with love and gratefulness towards the majesty of him." "But the earth does turn," Nix insisted, her mumble firming with frustration. Though already nearly blind, she closed her eyes and viewed the orrery from above in her mind. She pictured the path of the sphere as it rotated around the bronze sun. She remembered the tiniest ticking under her fingertips as she followed its course. She had felt it turn in her grip as it made a full passage around the sun. She tried to explain. It must turn to keep Mother forever facing the Father. The earth turns once fully around as it makes a complete circuit through the seasons. One slow turn every year. It's the only way for one side of the earth to be continually burning under the sun's gaze. Kinjal scoffed. No wonder her mother tossed her away. She's too stupid to understand the simplest truth. "But she's right," a voice said behind them, rising from the open door to the Astronicum's dome. Nyx froze, only shifting her clouded gaze towards the patch of brightness that marked the open door. A shadow darkened the threshold. She did not need sight to know who stood there, recognizing the hard tones, presently undercut with a hint of amusement. "Prioress Guile," Sister Reed said. "What an honor. Please join us." The shadow moved away from the brightness as the head of the cloistered school entered. "It seems the youngest among you has proven that insight does not necessarily equate with the ability to see." "But surely," Sister Reed started. "Yes, surely," Prioress Guile interrupted. "It is a subtlety of astronomical knowledge that is usually reserved for those in their first years of alchemical studies, not for a seventh-year underclass. Even then, many alchemical students have difficulty seeing what is plain before their eyes." A shuffle of leather and stone marked the prioress' approach to the orrery. Finally, releasing her grip on the world, Nyx straightened and bowed her head. "Let us test what else this young woman of only 14 winters can discern from today's lesson." The prioress' finger lifted Nyx's chin. "Can you tell us why those northern crown experience seasons, from the icy bite of winter to the warmth of summer, even when one side of earth forever faces the sun?" Nyx had to swallow twice to feel her tongue. It is to remind us of the gift of the father to the mother, so we better appreciate his kindness at being allowed to live in the crown, in the safe lands, between the scorching heat and the icy death. He gives us a taste of hot and cold with the passage of each year. The prioress sighed. Yes, very good, just as Hero Mokfak had droned into you. The finger lifted her chin higher, as if to study Nyx more intently. But what does the orrery tell you? Nyx stepped back. Even with her hazy sight, she was unable to withstand the weight of Giles' attention any longer. She returned to the orrery again and pictured the path of the earth around the coal-heated sun. She had felt the waxing and the waning of the warmth of the sphere as it rotated fully around. The earth's path is not a perfect circle around the sun, Nyx noted aloud. More like an oval. An ellipse, it's called. Nyx nodded and cast a quizzical look at the prioress. Maybe when the earth's path is farthest from the sun, farthest from the heat, could that be our winter time? It's not a bad guess. Even some of the most esteemed alchemists might tell you the same, but they are no more correct than Hero Mokfak. Then why? Nyx asked, curiosity getting the better of her. What if I told you that when we have our dark winters here in the northern half of the crown, that the lands to the far south enjoy a bright summer? Truly? Nyx asked. At the same time? Indeed. Nyx scrunched her brow at what sounded like absurdity. Still, she sensed the prioress was hinting at something with the words she had just emphasized. Dark and bright. Have you ever wondered, Guile pressed, how in winter the father sits lower in the sky, then higher again in summer? Though the sun never vanishes, it makes a tiny circle in the sky over 1 year's passing. Nyx gave a tiny shake of her head and a wave towards her eyes. There was no way she could appreciate such subtlety. A hand touched her shoulder. Of course, I'm sorry, but let me assure you this is true. And as such, can you guess from your study of the orrery why this might be? Nyx turned back to the convoluted rings of bronze on the table. She sensed she was being tested. She could almost feel the prioress's intensity burning next to her. She took a deep breath, determined not to disappoint the head of the school. She reached out a hand to the orrery. May I? Of course. Nyx again took her time to center herself on the warm sun and fumble to the third ring. Once she found the sphere affixed there, she examined its shape more closely, taking care of the tiny bead of the moon that spun on its own ring around the earth. She particularly noted how the sphere of the earth was pinned to the ring beneath it. Guile offered a suggestion. Sister Reed, it might help our younger student if he set everything in motion again. After a rustling of skirts, and the mechanism's complicated gears resumed their ticking, and the ring started to turn again, Nyx concentrated on how the earth slowly spun in place as it made a full pass around the sun. She struggled to understand how the southern half could be brighter, while the northern side was darker. Then the understanding traveled up her fingertips. The pin around which the earth spun was not perfectly up and down. Instead, it was set at a slight angle from the sun. Could that be the answer? Certainty grew. She spoke as she continued her own pass around the sun. As the earth turns, its axis spins at a slight angle rather than straight up and down. Because of that, for a time, the top half of the world leans towards the sun, creating our bright northern summer. The prioress confirmed. And when that happens, the bottom half is left leaning away from the sun, marking the southern crown's gloomy winter. Nyx turned to the prioress, shocked. So the seasons are due to the earth spinning crookedly in place, leaning one side more fully towards the sun than away. Murmurs spread among the students. Some sounded distraught, others incredulous. But at least Bird offered no overt ridicule, not in the presence of the prioress. Still, Nyx felt her face heating up again. Then a hand patted her shoulder, ending with a squeeze of reassurance. Startled by the contact, she flinched away. She hated any unexpected touch. Many a boy and even some girls had come of late to grab at her, often cruelly, pinching her what was most tender and private. She could not even accuse or point a finger. Not that she often didn't know who it was, especially Bird, who always reeked of rank sweat and sour, yeasty breath. It was a cloud that he carried about him from the stores of ale secretly sent to him by his father and Fisker. "I'm sorry," the prioress said softly, plainly noting Nyx's reaction and unease. Nyx tried to retreat, but one of her fingers had hooked through the earth's ring. When she had flinched, embarrassment turned to panic. She tried to extract her hand, but twisted her finger wrong. A metallic pop sounded, which earned a gasp from Sister Reed. Free now, Nyx withdrew her hand from the orrery, clutched a fist to her chest. Something tinged and tanged across the stone floor near her toes. She broke it," Bird blurted out. But there was no scorn, only shock. Another hand grasped at her elbow and yanked her back. Caught off guard, Nyx stumbled and tripped to her knees on the floor. "What have you done, you clumsy girl?" Sister Reed still clutched her. "I'll have you switched to your core for this." "No, you won't," Professor Giles said. "It was an accident, one for which I'm equally at fault, for startling the child. Would you have me tied to the rod and beaten, Sister Reed?" "I would never." "Then neither will this child suffer. Let her be." Nyx's elbow was freed, but not before those same fingers squeezed hard, digging down to the bone. The message was clear. This matter was not over. It was a bruising promise. Sister Reed intended to exact payment for being humiliated in front of the students, in front of the prioress. Giles' robes swished as her voice lowered to the floor. "See? It's just the Earth's moon that had broken free." Nyx pictured the prioress collecting the bronze marble from the floor. "It can be easily returned to its proper place and repaired." Nyx gained her feet, her face as hot as the sun, tears, threatening. Sister Reed, mayhap it's best you end the lesson today. I think your 7th years have had more than enough celestial excitement for one morning." Nyx was already moving before Sister Reed dismissed the class to break. for their midday meal. She raced, her tears, towards the brightness of the door. No one blocked her, perhaps fearing to catch her humiliation and shame. In her haste to escape, she left behind her cane, a sturdy length of polished elm, which she used to help guide her steps. Still, she refused to go back, and fled out into the sunlight and the shadows of a summer's day. That marks the end of chapter 1, and we will continue next time with chapter 2. I hope that wasn't too graphic for you. This is a fantasy book, and I hope my soft-spoken voice wasn't too jarring as well. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever you are. Take care, be safe, and sending my love. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.